Hello? There we go. All right. Now we can do the stream. I did not want to talk for a fucking hour to myself again. All right. So, like I said, we're just going to be going through a bunch of interesting articles, looking up the history behind some of the events going on today, and just trying to have fun, man, trying to get educated. So, let's do this. So our first article is about all of the crazy stuff happening in Brazil. Jair Bolsonaro has been kind of fucking with the institutions ever since he got into office. Of course, he's a terrible president, or whatever they call it in Brazil. And, he's been responsible for the rainforest getting completely destroyed for the sake of private profits. He's kind of laid the groundwork for deeper militarization in Brazil. So we're going to read all about that, and we're going to try to go deeper into the history of why this is happening and how the U.S. kind of laid the groundwork for this kind of political maneuvering and operations in Brazil and Latin America in the wider context. So let's get right into it. So this article is from Jacobin by Olavo Passos de Souza and Mikhail Wolf. Jair Bolsonaro is laying the groundwork for a coup in Brazil. On October 2nd, more than 200 million Brazilians will elect their next president. Most voters will likely choose between two of Brazil's best-known politicians, current President Jair Messias Bolsonaro, who is struggling for re-election after 4 tumultuous years, and former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva of the left-wing Workers' Party, who is aiming for an unprecedented and non-consecutive third term. And this part of the article just kind of delves into the background that, like I said, leads up to where we are right now in Brazil regarding the elections. So, in 1889, after slavery was abolished, the agrarian elite withdrew its support for the monarchy and allied with a disgruntled military to stage a coup that removed the Emperor Pedro II. This agrarian military alliance established an oligarchic republic which they subsequently dominated to protect their interest. This first republic was in turn toppled by the Revolution of 1930, in which the urban middle class allied with disgruntled military officers led by Getulio Vargas to wrest power from the agrarian elite. President Vargas's authoritarian government was responsible for some progressive social reforms. Then in 1937, Vargas launched a self-coup to reinforce his grip on the country by imposing an anti-communist corporatist dictatorship, before he himself was ousted from power in 1945 by a growing democratic opposition. And if you look through history, a lot of similar events were happening around that time. That's when communism and socialism really started to enter the global zeitgeist, and as well as industrialization just kind of really taking a grip on the world and devastating some of those countries that were left behind and exploited by first world countries. So let's continue. 20 years of unstable democratic rule followed until in 1964, left-wing President João Goulart came under fire from the conservative elite that opposed his radical social reforms. Goulart's increase of the minimum wage, expansion of labor rights, and plans for an agrarian reform, their first one in the country's history, were more than enough to bring the elite and the military together to stage a US-backed coup promoted as a defense against communism. The bloody dictatorship that held power from 1964 to 1985 tortured and murdered left-wing dissidents and massively increased the national debt. While doing so, it deflected from its crimes through the use of nationalistic rhetoric that Bolsonaro perpetuates, as we shall see. And we definitely shall see. It is truly history repeating itself all across the globe at the moment. I wanted to bring up this article here. Just give me one moment. Let's see here. Monitor. There we go. Yep. So this article is titled "The U.S. Role in the 1964 Coup in Brazil: A Reassessment" by Anthony W. Pereira, who is with King's College in London. So this article really does a good job of breaking down why the U.S. got involved in Latin America and why this is relevant to what's going on today. Or I should say, it helps us understand why this is relevant to what's going on today. So let's take a look. And we're only going to be looking at the highlighted sections. But I highly suggest you read through all of this yourself to get a really good understanding of the history of coups and government corruption in Brazil, as well as the US's capitalist, imperialistic kind of dominance of Latin America, especially during the 1950s, 60s, all the way really up to the late 70s, early 80s. The economic interests of imperialistic U.S. corporations made the U.S. government's opposition to Goulart inevitable. Neto argues that the U.S. turned definitively against Goulart in early 1962 because of the Brazilian position in the Organization of American States, Punta del Este meeting in January of that year, refusing to completely endorse the U.S. position on Cuba. Now, if you're brand new to politics, Cuba had their revolution, I believe it was I think it was in 1959. The U.S. tried to invade in the Bay of Pigs. They failed spectacularly. So Cuba kind of became the U.S.'s pariah state, and they imposed a bunch of illegal sanctions and just tried to punish them basically for not bowing to U.S. hegemony. The U.S. was engaged in a process of preventative counter-revolution on a world scale that made a clash with Goulart inevitable. He traces the events of 1964 to a meeting in the White House on the 30th of July, 1962, which definitively opened the road to the coup in Brazil. Tavares sees U.S. Ambassador to Brazil Lincoln Gordon as a key figure in devising and implementing U.S. policy, and believes that all aspects of that policy, even the deployment of the Peace Corps, were directed towards the removal of Goulart. And that's usually always the case whenever the U.S. or some other imperialistic force or first world country tries to go in and quote-unquote help these developing nations. It's almost always just to steal natural resources and get them under the thumb of whatever country is trying to do the bullying. So this section right here that we're going to be reading a snippet from is Politics in the USA After World War II. This stuff is still relevant to this day. We're kind of still watching this kind of arc of global geopolitics play out around the world. Overall, changes in the United States in the 1950s and early 1960s made it less likely that there could be peaceful relations between governments of the left or center left in Latin America and the U.S. government. The intensification of the Cold War, U.S. paranoia about communism, and the dribbling away of the New Deal progressivism of the 1930s and 1940s in U.S. domestic politics made such a rapprochement difficult. Instead, a national security state, high defense spending, and militarization and social conformism were characteristics of the United States in this period. Hans Morgenthau, the father of classical realism and the author of the influential Politics Among Nations, first published in 1948, argued that the United States was more powerful but also more vulnerable after World War II. He thought that the American tradition in foreign policy, at least until the Spanish-American War, had been anti-imperialist and legalistic. Yeah, right. Trail of Tears taking over an entire fucking country from their native population. Okay. But this was made in 1950 when everyone was fucking hopped up on McCarthyism, so I'll let it slide, I guess. He argued that the U.S. had to abandon this tradition and adopt a new perspective appropriate to its new power. In a striking passage, he writes, "From the end of the Civil War to the beginning of the Second World War, it mattered little what policies the United States pursued with regard to its Latin American neighbors, China, or Spain. The self-sufficiency of its own strength, in conjunction with the operation of the balance of power, made the United States immune to the boundless ambition born of success and the fear of frustration which goes with failure. The United States could take success and failure in stride without being unduly tempted or afraid. Now it stands outside the enclosures of its continental citadel, taking on the whole of the political world as friend or foe. It has become dangerous and vulnerable, feared and afraid. The risk of being very powerful, but not omnipotent, is aggravated by a second fact, a dual revolution in the political situation of the world. The multiple state system of the past, which in the moral sense was one world, has been transformed into two inflexible, hostile blocks, which are morally two worlds. So, I mean, basically what he's saying here is after World War II, the U.S. was in a position of global dominance. The powers in Europe were devastated. The old world superpowers were devastated by the war. Obviously, Nazi Germany was completely obliterated and basically not even a country anymore. Japan was all fucked up and occupied by the U.S. So they were basically the only capitalist country to not have major devastation within their own borders. And on top of that, the United States is a very valuable geopolitical resource. There's a lot of land that's farmable. There's a lot of natural resources and gas. So it put the United States in the position to kind of take over and be the dominant force. And you'll see a pattern throughout history that once a nation becomes sort of an imperial power, the paranoia and the fear of that power being taken away and collapsing is always there. And now in the context of this new world order, which he's describing with the two hostile blocks, you had the United States and Europe, who were capitalists and industrialists, and you had the bloc, which back then in the 40s, 50s, basically all the way up until the collapse of the Soviet Union, the major bloc was the USSR and its sphere of influence, as well as China, but China was still kind of developing and dealing with its own severe problems at that time. So you have this huge industrial capitalist nation who wants to keep its dominance. So they began this kind of campaign of anti-leftism, anti-communism, and brutal exploitation and coercion around the world. And that all really started in Latin America. So let's get back into the article. In this new Cold War environment, according to Morgan, therefore, not to be judged in purely economic terms. According to Morgenthau, the U.S. had to be prepared to defend its national interests pragmatically and unequivocally in Latin America. The totalitarian menace was supposedly so great that it required the managers of the U.S. state to abandon conventional morality in order to combat it, straight out of the fascist playbook, where they perceive an enemy that is so great and so immoral that our own governments and military's immorality is quote-unquote justified. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, the totalitarian model developed by political scientists such as Carl Friedrich was used to justify hardline positions against communism and hints of communism. According to this view, once a country went communist, it was impossible to ever restore capitalism and liberal democracy to it. In the words of Elliot Abrams, the architect of policies against the Sandinista revolution in Nicaragua in the 1980s, if communism was a disease whose existence could not be prevented, it was one whose spread was controllable. Therefore, a global system of quarantine or containment was necessary. After the passage of the 1947 National Security Act and the X article by realist diplomat George Kennan in the same year, containment became a linchpin of U.S. foreign policy. In this perspective, Latin America was of vital strategic importance because it contained raw materials, that's a key word, raw materials that were of economic and military value to the U.S., and Latin American votes in the United Nations gave the U.S. political support. In addition, Latin America would be the last area the U.S. could rely on Damn, I lost my place. In addition, Latin America would be the last area the U.S. could rely on if Europe became anti-American. According to Kennan, it was important to prevent Latin America from being militarily exploited by the USSR or mobilized against the U.S. Writing in 1950, Kennan declared the security had to come first in U.S. policy toward Latin America. The final answer might be an unpleasant one, he wrote, but we should not hesitate before police repression by the local government. This is not shameful, since the communists are essentially traitors. It is better to have a strong regime in power than a liberal government if it is indulgent and relaxed and penetrated by communists. Now, something I didn't know, but I learned through reading this article, is that Kennedy was extremely anti-left. Like, he orchestrated the U.S.'s involvement with the overthrow of Brazil, and he had conversations that were secretly recorded that showed his stance against leftism and communism. I mean, he was really just a product of his time. Like I said, severe anti-communism and socialism brought on by McCarthyism, where people were terrified of the USSR and of the Soviet bloc, and they had all kinds of propaganda put out painting them as basically the leftist version of Nazis, which is obviously ridiculous. I mean, Stalinism was authoritarian and it was terrible, but you have to look at the context of the USSR as a whole when Lenin was in power and after Stalin died and Gorbachev took power. And unfortunately, Stalin kind of left a mark on Russia that continues to this day in terms of authoritarianism, but it wasn't all bad. And at some points during the USSR's reign in Russia and the Soviet bloc, they actually had a higher standard of living in Russia compared to the United States. The two key mechanisms of containment were economic aid to allied regimes and political parties on one hand, and support for regime overthrow in the case of recalcitrant or overly relaxed and indulgent governments. In Latin America, an example of the use of the first mechanism is U.S. policy to Bolivia after the revolution there in 1952. The U.S. reacted in a moderate fashion to the revolution, offering economic assistance to the new government and attempting to remove Bolivia. And attempting to move Bolivia in a conservative direction. The policy was considered a great success inside the U.S. government. In the words of Zunez, the National Security Council saw a successful handling of the Bolivian situation as a model, and it was one that would be exploited to the fullest in Latin America and elsewhere. Now, if you want a great book that kind of delves into the devastation of Latin America and the introduction of neoliberal economics and government organizing in Latin America and how brutal and disgusting the U.S. military and CIA treated Latin America during the 1950s up to around the mid-1970s. The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein is a great place to start. I'm sure some of you guys have heard about the book before, but it really gets into the nitty-gritty and how the Chicago-style school of economics kind of was exported all around the globe with devastating results, and how MK Ultra kind of influenced the way in which the Chicago School of Neoliberal Economics was implemented over there as a kind of shock therapy, where they would go in and devastate the country economically and militarily so that the people would kind of be in a daze, so that they wouldn't really realize the kind of shift of power and the shift of resources being taken away from the people and being put into the hands of corporations, U.S. corporations most of the time, as well as private local corporations for the sake of capital gain. So now we kind of have a background into the history of violent overthrow in Latin America and the US's attitude towards that. And I kind of think that their attitude their attitude is kind of like impermeated into the space of Latin American politics, where bad actors within the political sphere kind of use the United States tactics to their advantage. They've adopted that kind of shock doctrine to further exploit the countries where they have power. So let's get back in the article with that in mind. So now in the article, it gives us a little bit of background to Lula and why Bolsonaro kind of sees him as a threat now. Lula's first term as president from 2002 to 2010 saw the development of social programs in partnership with the private sector that quickly returned the economy to sustained 4% annual growth levels after years of neoliberal crisis. Programs like Bolsa Familia, which established a universal basic income for families living below the poverty line, and Fome Zero, Zero Hunger, proved highly successful in combating poverty and improving education. Economically, Lula's government was aided by high commodity prices, which enabled it to make large investments in sectors such as energy and infrastructure. However, all was not roses in Lula's government. In 2005, a large-scale bribery scandal broke in Congress. Dubbed Mensalao, monthly payment, the scandal involved buying votes for federal programs with public money. The largest of its kind until then, the Mensalao controversy damaged the PT's image as being outside Brazil's notoriously corrupt governing system. Nevertheless, by the time Lula left office, his personal approval rating had reached a record high of 87%. If you're not sure what PT is, by the way, it's like it's like Brazil's Labor Party, or more left-leaning populist party. And we're not going to really get into Dilma Rousseff. It's not super important. She was put in after Lula came into power, or, elected. I'm pretty sure she was elected. I got to read more into it. But anyway, Dilma Rousseff was decidedly less pragmatic than Lula. Dilma became more isolated as she refused to go along with the patronage politics of PT allied parties. So you'll see that as a trend a lot in countries, not in the US because all we have are fucking right-wing parties, but you see that as a trend nowadays, like especially in places like the UK. It's a great kind of comparison where labor parties more and more are kind of getting absorbed and neutered by the more neoliberal parties, not the right parties, but more of the center-right parties. You know what I mean? And I think it's important to always remember that the only way we're really going to get political and economic change for the people is to have our labor force organized. Because the way that it works in our system of capitalism is that money is power. So the people, the sociopaths, the psychopaths who do whatever it takes to get that money and power usually have the broader resources and say over the government. And the only way to combat that is through a strong labor movement. By 2015, with a full-blown economic recession underway, the Brazilian Congress, then mostly opposed to Rousseff, pounced on what was dubbed fiscal peddling. This was a new term meant to describe the use of state-owned banks by one branch of the federal government to front funds required for paying general government obligations without officially declaring a loan. Though it had long been a common fiscal practice, Congress now labeled such measures unauthorized loans that were not only economically irresponsible, but also constituted an impeachable offense. Rousseff's subsequent removal appeared to be a coup in all but name, as her successor, the conservative Vice President Michael Temer, moved quickly to undo many of the PT's most successful social policies without an electoral mandate. And that's also a trend you'll see with right-wingers in any nation, is that they have a lot more willingness to bend the institutions to politically assassinate and remove their opposition. So basically, Rousseff and members of her cabinet and parts of Congress who were on their side and in the PT party were getting loans from state banks to pay for government operations. And the Brazilian government had been doing that for a long time. It's probably economically irresponsible, but not illegal. But when it suited the right-wing party's interests, they just declared it irresponsible and illegal to push out the more left-leaning parties, especially because Rousseff was less willing to bend to their demands than Lula, who over the years has become a lot more centrist and willing to work with the centrist and center-right to get at least some of his programs through. Alrighty. At the same time, Operation Car Wash, a federal operation authorized by the conservative magistrate Sergio Moro, carried out an extensive investigation of government corruption. It led to the arrest of numerous politicians, almost all on the left, even though right-wing politicians, including Temer, were also mired in corruption scandals. Indeed, Operation Car Wash's principal target was Lula himself, who was arrested and charged almost in tandem with Rousseff's impeachment. There was scant evidence of wrongdoing in Lula's case, with the chief prosecutor noting that we don't have the evidence, but we have conviction of his guilt. That is rich. We don't have anything that shows that he's guilty, but we think he's guilty, so throw him in jail anyway. Leaked messages offered strong evidence of blatant political bias on the part of Moro and his colleagues. This convinced many Brazilians that Operation Car Wash was little more than a purge of the left, which it totally was. Come on, you have a conservative wing, you have a conservative operation to literally just purge the government of the left. That's exactly what it is, because Lula was getting in programs that actually helped people out and didn't just give away money to corporations, which is what the right-wingers love. Don't let them tell you anything different. All around the world, right-wing parties are solely for corporations and corporate globalization. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. By impeaching Rousseff, imprisoning Lula on trumped-up charges, and sweeping the PT's impressive accomplishments under the rug while singling the party out as a den of corruption, the conservative reaction of the mid-2010s helped pave way for far-right fringe politician Jair Bolsonaro to be elected president. And man, I had a point. let me fucking by impeaching. Honest, singing the party out as corruption. That's what I was gonna say. So it's all manufacturing consent, man. The right, unfortunately, is a lot better at playing the political game a lot of the time because they're more willing to bend the rules and bend the truth to fit their narrative. So, of course, for the average person who isn't super involved in politics and is just trying to get through life, they see on the news Lula and a bunch of the left is being arrested for corruption and fucking you over, regardless of whether it's true or not. You're going to have a percentage of the population that just takes that at face value and is turned off from the left. So, I mean, that strategy has been played out so many times. And if you were here for the article we just went through, kind of detailing the CIA's involvement in these countries, you'll see that these governments in Latin America and Brazil specifically are taking it right out of the CIA's playbook of divide and conquer. The former low-ranking army officer, and this is talking about Jair Bolsonaro now, the former low-ranking army officer turned politician made his career as a far-right polemicist. He had whitewashed the history of the military dictatorship, called for the arrest and torture of leftists, expressed hostility to protecting the environment, especially the Amazon rainforest, much of which has been destroyed, and otherwise embraced every conceivable reactionary talking point. The global trend of the 2010s of increased polarization as mainstream conservative politicians lost ground to reactionaries, combined with a severe economic crisis to create the perfect conditions for Bolsonaro's unlikely rise. And we're seeing that rise all around the world, man. The world is more unstable. Economically, people are getting screwed. Energy around the world is getting harder to procure, and it's getting way more expensive, which we're going to get to an article that is just absolutely fucking insane about that later on. But the more people suffer and the more people suffer without there being a strong left to give them an alternative, without fail, you'll have a percentage of the population that turns to fascism and strongmen as a kind of way to desperately try and get out of the situation that they're in. And people like Jair Bolsonaro, Trump, Putin, they all use that uncertainty and fear, disinformation and ignorance of the population to pat them on the back while they're stabbing them, or that's, I fucked up that analogy, to shake their hand while they're stabbing them in the back, basically. You know what I mean? Promise all these things to only a certain portion of the population who feels left behind while fucking over everybody in the process, you know? The Bolsonaro storm was only possible because of Lula's arrest in 2018, which shattered the long-standing balance between the center-left PT and the center-right PSDP that had existed since the 1990s. As Lula sat in jail during the run-up to that year's election, the left electorate split three ways between Haddad, Lula's hastily anointed successor, the pragmatist center-left figure Ciro Gomes, and the decidedly socialist Guilherme Boulos. So like I said, divide and conquer, man. That's what the right is really freaking good at, dude. Much has changed in the past 4 years. Bolsonaro has virtually no legislative achievements to boast about. Bolsonaro and his neoliberal treasury minister, Paulo Guedes, whose control of the government agenda resembles that of an Ottoman Grand Vizier, has been guilty of serious economic mismanagement. This has combined with a negligent, denialist response to the COVID-19 crisis to undermine public confidence in his administration. Following his disastrous handling of the pandemic, the president has been relying more and more on high-ranking military officers to lead government ministries. Treasury Minister Guedes is the last one left of his original cabinet. His vice president, the Army General Hamilton Mourão, fell out with Bolsonaro, who replaced him on the presidential ticket with a former Minister of Defense, General Braga Neto. Amid such instability, Lula has appeared as a phoenix rising from the ashes. Yeah, I mean, that's right out of the fascist playbook, man. As soon as they feel their grip of power slipping, they try to shore up the military and get the military on their side. So if they don't win their elections and maintain power, it makes it easier to subvert the will of the people because they have the monopoly on violence. All right. So now we're going to get into how Jair Bolsonaro has tried and continues to try to undermine the elections in Brazil. Much like Donald Trump falsely claiming that he would have won the popular vote had undocumented immigrants not been allowed to vote in 2016, Bolsonaro alleged that his victory in 2018 would have come in the first round were it not for supposed irregularities. And before I continue, so he won because he got Lula arrested. Think about that. That's fucking insane, and that is not democracy. Through multiple national and international electoral bodies, though multiple national and international electoral bodies have declared Brazil's voting machine secure time and time again, Bolsonaro continues to contend that voting with electronic machines only is unsafe and that paper ballots are the sole way to ensure transparency. On more than one occasion, he has ordered the armed forces to inspect electronic voting machines, albeit to no avail. Again, like I said, trying to shore up the military to have a firmer grip on power. This year, such unfounded accusations have continued to grow to the point of dominating Bolsonaro's political discourse. Bolsonaro's constant threats to democracy have placed him firmly against the nation's judiciary, whose chief justices have, with few exceptions, all taken turns criticizing the president's slew of public statements expressing authoritarian intent. Now, this shit is fucking crazy, man. Like, he's just straight up mask off being like, yep, I'm a fascist. Come join me. Fuck democracy. In August, Bolsonaro organized a special gala for the embalmed heart of Dom Pedro I, very fucking creepy, the first emperor of Brazil who proclaimed the country's independence in 1822. Pedro I died in Portugal in 1834. The rest of his body was transferred to Brazil in 1972, but his heart was kept separately in a church in Porto, where it will be returned after the bicentennial. Back in 1824, Pedro dissolved the Constitutional Assembly, tasked with producing a new constitution for independent Brazil. The document, in Pedro's eyes, excessively constrained his executive powers, so he scrapped it, exiled some of the opposition, and wrote his own constitution. In a recent interview... Yeah, before I get down there, I wanted to also bring up where basically Bolsonaro's kind of parroting and calling back towards those days of extreme militarization and kind of nationalistic fervor with military parades. So in this article by CNN, written by Marcia Reverdosa and Rodrigo Pedroso, reporting with Camila Rocha, as Brazil's military rolls out the tanks for Independence Day, Bolsonaro tells fans to make a stand. Listen to the insane freaking shit that he says, man. Along with First Lady Michelle Bolsonaro, the president attended a military parade in the capital of Brasilia on Wednesday morning, greeting large crowds of supporters as the pair rode in a vintage Rolls-Royce convertible before the beginning of the event. Already with the fascist iconography with the Rolls-Royce. The Brazilian people today are taking to the streets to celebrate 20 years of independence and eternity freedom. What is at stake is our freedom and our future. The population knows that this is the one that guides our decision, Bolsonaro said in an interview with the Brazilian state television channel ahead of the parade. I call on you on September 7th to take to the streets for the last time. All of you here have sworn to give your life for freedom. Repeat with me. I swear to give my life for freedom, Bolsonaro said as he accepted the Liberal Party's presidential nomination on July 23rd. That is fucking insane, man. He's trying to rile up all the brown shirts and make it so that he has a group of the population who is willing to subvert democracy and fight and kill to keep him in power. It is truly freaking insane, man. So let's get to the end of this little section of the article. In a recent interview, Bolsonaro once again claimed that he will accept the outcome of the election only if it is honest and transparent, a form of doublespeak like that of Donald Trump. The allegation of fraud, the most likely pretext for a self-coup attempt, depends on how successfully Bolsonaro can sow doubt in the democratic process. If he can succeed in this task, he would then need the military support to accomplish an undemocratic seizure of power. So there you go, folks. I mean, Trump and the United States' attitude towards Latin America in the past have really laid the groundwork for this kind of fascist takeover. You know what I mean? Bolsonaro is kind of just doing what the CIA had instructed his predecessors to do, man. You know, like I said, trying to shore up the military by appointing members of his cabinet and members of the government, having military members appointed to those positions, trying to stir up those nationalist, fascist-minded individuals within the country to try and subvert the election. He knows that he hasn't done anything to actually help the common person, and they're starting to see through his shtick, much like we have a subsection of Republicans who are starting to see through Trump's shtick, although here we have a more dangerous fascist who's, in my opinion, is probably going to get the nomination here during the presidential election, Ron DeSantis. Anyway, he's trying to make sure that he holds on to power no matter what, man. It's truly scary. I'm not sure that it'll work. It's just more likely to work in places like Latin America because they just have a history of, what do you say? LOL, still more sane than several generations of people that mutilate their own genitals because they don't understand or accept biology and believe that theft of socialism is fine. LOL, a society based on nationalism is still better than a nation divided by racist and bigoted ideals of identity politics. Dude, that is just such fucking projection, bro. Like, are you serious? Several generations of people that mutilate their own genitals, man. Like, first of all, just let people do what the fuck they want to do, bro. What does it have to do with you, man? It literally has nothing to do with you at all, man. And a society based on nationalism is a definition of racism and bigotry, bro. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You seriously need to read a book or something, man. I'm gonna pray for you, bro. Like, for real, man. Like, the world does not need to be divided into these little tribal sections of, oh my god, this is mine, fuck you. It makes no sense, and that's why the world is so fucked right now, man. Think about the fact that we have huge, hostile, aggressive, imperialist countries with weapons of mass fucking destruction, dude. And any moment we get someone who is just a little bit more aggressive than Putin, it could literally spell the end of fucking civilization. And this is all because of profiteering and power politics, man. Come on. Nationalism is nothing about racism, fool. It's about geography, Einstein. Bro, read a book. I'm begging you, man. Nationalism is literally the definition of racism, bro. LOL, your shtick is played out and done. Bro, if it's true, it's gonna keep on being said, man. You are literally just the person in Germany who would be like, yeah, well, we just need to keep Germany strong and keep it pure. Like, that's literally just what you're saying without being explicit about it, bro. Like, for real. Like, come on, man. I know you can do better than that. No hate, bro. I want everybody to get educated and everybody to try to work for the common good of mankind. It's as simple as that, man. You're just brainwashed by the propaganda, unfortunately, bro, and I'm sorry about that. But shit, man, let's fucking get back into this article. Or we're actually done with this one. What do we have next? That's your problem. Race is about ethnicity. Race, you fucktard. LOL. God, what? That's your problem. Race is about ethnicity. Race, you fucktard. LOL. Try to form better sentences, bro. That's really fucking hard to understand. No, race is literally made up, bro. The concept of race is very, very new and is about historical context, man. Like, back in ancient Rome, the shit that you kind of people love to fucking talk about, they did not have the concept of black and white, man. It was more about borders and nation states, you know what I mean? I'm sure they had some kind of ideology around ethnicity, but it was nothing like what we have today, man. It's literally just propaganda, bro. It's propaganda. Race has nothing to do with anybody. It has nothing to do with anything, man. It has nothing to do with the person's heart, with the person's mind, with the person's soul. Now, because of the way that the world is and the geopolitical positions that people are in and the warlord fucking maniacs who are in charge of our nations, we get pumped with propaganda that makes us believe that we're different than the person in India or the person in China, when it's not the case, man. Our enemy is not other people or foreigners. Our enemy is the systems of control that keep us separated and keep us from the resources that we need, man. It's as simple as that. It's really as simple as that. All right. All right, now this shit is fucking crazy, man. Like, I haven't really been keeping up with the Trump stuff just because I feel like, I don't know, it's more of like a lib brain fucking dumbass shit to be just obsessed with Trump and what he's doing. But this is just so fucking crazy that I had to cover it, man. Like, I really did. So this article is from Common Dreams. It says, deeply alarming. Files seized from Trump include document on foreign nations' nuclear capacity. A document, and this article is by Jake Johnson. A document pertaining to a foreign government's nuclear capacity was reportedly among the files that federal agents seized from Donald Trump's Florida home last month, raising further alarm about the former U.S. president's handling of secret material and, according to non-proliferation advocates, spotlighting the inherent dangers of atomic weaponry. Wow, that is fucking... I'm glad that you fucking started talking to me, bro, because it just leads right into what I was saying. Shit, man. Nuclear weapons with these parasitic capitalist enterprises who will do anything in the name of profit, and these people who have been brainwashed by the system of profit over everything will blow up the fucking world, dude. They will end existence as long as they have a fucking bag of money at the end of it. For real. And Trump is a quintessential fucking example of that. He's like a cartoon 1980s fucking con man, dude. And I seriously don't understand how people could fall for his fucking dumb bullshit. I mean, I do kind of understand because people are desperate right now, man. And America has a huge education problem where we don't teach the things, we don't teach people critical thinking, and that's on purpose. So people like Donald Trump can get the money bag while we all sit here in the fucking dirt and suffer, man. According to the Washington Post, FBI agents who raided Mar-a-Lago on August 8th found a document describing a foreign government's military defense, including its nuclear capabilities. The reporting does not specify which nation. This isn't solely about Donald Trump. It's an indictment of the inherent flaws and fragility of the nuclear system. Documents about such highly classified operations require special clearances on a need-to-know basis, not just top-secret clearance, the newspaper observed Tuesday. Some special access programs can have as few as a couple dozen government personnel authorized to know of an operation's existence. Records that deal with such programs are kept under lock and key, almost always in a secure, compartmented information facility, with a designated control officer to keep tabs on their location. So I was actually in the military doing intelligence for about 2 years, and I'm telling you, if Donald Trump was just a normal person who did this shit, he would literally be in jail for the rest of his life. I had to sign a document when I first joined the military that said that if I ever mishandled any type of government secrets, that it's automatically fucking 80 years in prison for me, dude. So don't tell me that it's not the case, that it's just straight up a 2-tier system in the United States when it comes to justice, man. Come on. It's fucking insane. And what he's describing is SCI, so secret compartmentalized information. What do you say? I'm out of here. We're done trying to save the minds of people like you. Whatever's coming, you're about to be lost behind it. See you on the other side. Do you not hear how fucking fascist you sound, dude? Like, you're just proving my point, bro. Put down the spear, put down the pitchfork, go outside, hug somebody, get off the internet and touch grass sometimes, man. Come on. We're all fucking brothers and sisters here, man. You gotta relax. I love you. All right. But no, I was saying that he had information that was top secret SCI. SCI is the highest level of security clearance where, like it said, like only a couple of people can know about it. I mean, I will say that some classified things that are secret just shouldn't be secret. They have a lot of weird, stupid shit that's classified as confidential, as secret, or top secret. But I mean, we're gonna get to it more later with some tweets and some more information about this. Like, there's almost no doubt in my mind that Trump definitely sold documents and definitely fucked over, like literally got CIA agents killed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get back into this. We know blackmail is exceedingly within his realm of behavior, which means literally any nuclear power could be the one implicated here, Miles wrote on Twitter. The reporting is vague and worth noting that it need not be a nuclear weapons country, but could be a country with a nuclear program like Iran. Was Trump holding onto docs about Iran's nuclear program? If so, what for? Last but not least, we know Trump had zero intellectual interest in these issues, Miles argued. There's no chance he held onto this out of simple curiosity, and these are not documents one has by accident. Why did Trump hold these highest level of secrets, and what were his plans? Listen, he is a born con man. 48 empty folders? He didn't just have empty folders because he thought the freaking SCI secret looked cool, man. He did some shit with that, man. You're about to see, man. You have no fucking idea. It's fucked up. All right. The newspaper noted Tuesday that after months of trying, according to government court filings, the FBI has recovered more than 300 classified documents from Mar-a-Lago this year. 184 in a set of 15 boxes sent to a National Archives and Records Administration in January. 38 more handed over by a Trump lawyer to investigators in June, and more than 100 additional documents unearthed in a court-approved search on August 8th. And just for the people who are like, oh, so what? He was a president, blah, 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 blah. Just take out Donald Trump and replace him with Obama. If Obama did this, it would be hell on fucking earth. There would be riots in the streets. There would be militia members trying to do a whole nother fucking January 6th over this, man. Come on. To nuclear non-proliferation campaigners, the new revelations mark yet another damning charge against a global order that has allowed and encouraged the spread of atomic weapons with the power to cause untold devastation. Derek Johnson, managing partner of Global Zero, a campaign supporting the total abolition of nuclear weapons, said in a statement late Tuesday that if you're feeling unsettled about these new revelations, it's important to keep in mind that what's sitting beneath the feeling is nuclear weapons. And he is absolutely right. Just like what I was talking about when I got into the conversation with that guy previously. Nuclear weapons are... It's been so long that nuclear weapons have been in the global zeitgeist that people kind of take it for granted now, but there is literally a gun pointed to every man, woman, and child's head across the entire world. That's what nuclear weapons are. I encourage you to look up videos on how the US and Russia would go about a nuclear war. It would be the total end of civilization. And the way that geopolitics are shaking up right now, it's becoming a more stark possibility that this kind of crap will happen. And we're seriously on a kind of roller coaster of insanity with this shit. And I want to make a distinction too. I actually do support nuclear power. It's cleaner than coal and natural gas, and it has gotten a lot safer since it was first introduced. So we want to have nuance here. Nuclear weapons are extremely dangerous and they should not exist, but we need to use every single resource available to us to stop the climate crisis. All right. That an ousted president could run off with highly sensitive documents in clear violation of federal law is stunning. But the fact that these secrets are about weapons that can kill hundreds of millions of people is orders of magnitude more consequential, said Johnson. Nuclear weapons expose Americans and the world to an unacceptably high, and as we're seeing tonight, unpredictable risk. That part of this story can't be overlooked and is what makes it so alarming. It's also worth noting that the man who carted off state secrets on a foreign nation's nuclear capability is the same one who had absolute authority to launch a nuclear attack at any time, and is doing everything he can to regain that power. And that's exactly why I don't believe in republics, man. Republics, and if you're unsure what a republic is, it's like when people democratically elect leaders to enact laws. No, I believe in some form of consolidation of power, just so we're not in constantly fucking going to meetings all day and arguing over a fucking, how much milk is in the store here or there. But when you have a concentration of power as high as you do in most republics, it just will eventually lead to some fucking insane person getting into that position and making it very difficult for them to get out. Someone who's insane or nefarious or greedy or sociopathic, man. You know what I mean? And it's just not good. Direct democracy is always how you have the most free and just society. And I know that people love to say that humans are naturally greedy and they're naturally selfish, but that is not the case. There have been studies time and time again that show the humility and generosity of human beings as a whole. And that's what we have to believe in if we're going to have a better world for us, because it can happen for us in our lifetime and for generations after us. This isn't solely about Donald Trump. It's an indictment of the inherent flaws and fragility of the nuclear system, Johnson continued. Nuclear risks require an unattainable level of perfection and control. If the system to manage those risks is inadequate in the United States, and it's impossible to conclude otherwise, the same is true in every nuclear-armed nation. The world we live in is simply too dangerous and unpredictable for nuclear weapons. The case for abolishing them makes itself. And he's exactly right. I mean, he's saying the same shit that I was saying, man. Nuclear weapons is just a ticking time bomb. You never know when some fucking insane person is just gonna push a button and send us all into a fucking Mad Max world, man. Now, if you thought that was crazy, Trump had nuclear documents, wait until you see what the fuck else is happening in regards to this, man. All right. So this comes from Dubious. Russian-speaking fake terrorists Ina Yashishin, Jesus, Anna de Rothschild arrived at Mar-a-Lago in May 2021. In September, the CIA sent a top-secret cable to all agents and station chiefs abroad, warning them that too many assets were getting killed or turned. And it continues over here. Oh, damn it. Give me 1 second. So give me 1 second. This tweet is fucking crazy. There we go. Potentially, and this is from Tristan Snell, potentially massive in light of what we know now. In October 2021, CIA counterintelligence sent a top secret cable warning an unusually number. Let me start that over. In October 2021, CIA counterintelligence sent a top secret cable warning an unusually number of damn, he fucked this tweet up. Number of confidential informants were being killed, captured, or compromised. In January 2021, Trump sold documents on these kind of informants. Come on, man. You cannot convince me that Trump wasn't over here selling our fucking CIA boys over to any government that would give him some fucking cash, man. He is in deep shit and he doesn't give a fuck anymore, man. He's trying to get what his is right now, try to avoid responsibility, and fuck it, that's been his goal the entire time, man. Yeah, and he's also like a man baby who loves attention, but come on, man, come on. He's getting fucking people murdered selling nuclear secrets. It's fucking insane. And unfortunately, there's a strong possibility that he's probably gonna get away with it, man. Really. We've got another article here. Damn, did I fucking... Yeah, here we go. So this article titled "Chorus of Legal Experts Denounce Trump-Appointed Judge's Ruling on Seized Documents." And this article is by Kenny Sansel. Legal experts have thoroughly condemned U.S. District Court Judge Aileen Cannon's Monday decision to prevent the U.S. Department of Justice from using materials obtained during the FBI's legally authorized search of former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home in its ongoing criminal investigation until a special master reviews the documents. Cannon, appointed by Trump and confirmed by Senate Republicans after he lost the 2020 election, argued in her ruling that the DOJ should be temporarily enjoined from examining the more than 11,000 government records seized last month, some of which were marked top secret, while an as-yet unnamed special master reviews them for material subject to claims of attorney-client and or executive privilege. So basically, the Trump-accorded judge is blocking the investigation. Basically, I mean, she's not, but that's basically what she's doing. She's basically saying that there needs to be someone who looks over the documents to make sure that there isn't anything that has attorney, client, and or executive privilege. The problem with that, which the article gets into, is that top secret documents, especially contained by someone who isn't in office anymore, who's a private citizen, aren't attorney, client privilege at all. And he doesn't have executive privilege because he's not the president right now. So it's just obvious corruption, obvious stalling by Trump sycophants. This court is giving special considerations to the former president that ordinary everyday citizens do not receive. Like I said previously, if I had done this when I was working intelligence in the military, my ass would be in a fucking dark cell, padlocked till the day I fucking die, man. It's ridiculous that he's not already fucking in jail, man. Cannon's order blocks federal prosecutors from analyzing the seized materials for criminal investigative purposes, even as it allows other government officials to keep scrutinizing them for purposes of intelligence classification and national security assessments. The New York Times reported Monday, Ronald S. Sullivan Jr., a Harvard Law School professor, said anyone targeted by a search warrant fears reputational harm, but that does not mean that they can get special masters appointed. He called Judge Cannon reasoning thin at best and giving undue weight to the fact that Mr. Trump is a former president. Excuse me. I find that deeply problematic, he said, emphasizing that the criminal justice system was supposed to treat everyone equally. This court is giving special considerations to the former president that ordinary, everyday citizens do not receive. Samuel W. Buell, a Duke University law professor, agreed. To any lawyer with serious federal criminal court experience who is being honest, this ruling is laughably bad, and the written justification is even flimsier. He wrote in an email, Donald Trump is getting something no one else ever gets in federal court. He's getting it for no good reason, and it will not in the slightest reduce the ongoing howls that he's being persecuted when he is being privileged. And that's the name of the game, man. They're just trying to further instill the victim complex within the right so Trump can use his base as a shield in case things get too hairy for him. As Bannon pointed out, Cannon said at the outset that she was inclined to give Team Trump what it wanted, but she thought it would be best to give the Justice Department an opportunity to make its case. And she literally just gave away the game right there. She said that she was inclined to give Team Trump what it wanted, which means Daddy Trump put me in charge, and now I'm going to pat him on the back and make sure that I do what he put me here to do. In a Slate opinion piece published Tuesday, Norman Eisen, former White House ethics czar during the Obama administration. These libs are so fucking stupid with the way they say shit. Ethics czar? That is so fucking retarded. During the Obama administration, and Fred Wertheimer, founder and president of Democracy 21, argued that Cannon's order ignores the impossibility of returning these documents to Trump, which is what I was talking about earlier. The pair explained, there are more than 103 classified documents, including 18 designated as top secret, signifying that their mishandling risks exceptionally grave damage to national security. And that's before factoring in other indica of danger, like the recent revelation that investigators seized 48 empty folders with classified markings, which raises a question: where are the documents? Sold. That's where they are. It is difficult to contemplate any basis for the return of even a single classified document under any circumstances, and certainly while the contents of these folders are unaccounted for. Indeed, Judge Cannon herself acknowledges the danger to national security posed by Trump's request to the extent it would stop the office of the Director of National Intelligence ongoing national security review. The order enjoins the government from further review and use of these documents for investigative purposes, not for purposes of intelligence classification and national security assessments. In this way, the order is inconsistent. Carving out the national security assessment from the injunction undercuts the assumption that Trump may be entitled to the return of these documents, as well as the premise that the ongoing criminal investigation must be halted. How can we contemplate the possible return of documents that could cost the lives of American agents to someone who has already treated these records with such neglect? Again, they don't care. They don't care about it making sense. They're just doing what they're doing because they can. You know what I mean? And there aren't proper mechanisms in place to prevent these abuses of power and authority. Further, how can national security officials make determinations on how best to protect the nation if criminal investigators are enjoined from taking investigative steps that may also serve that purpose? Indeed, some government officials would typically be part of both of these reviews, such as the Attorney General himself. The order's false dichotomy does not take account of those realities that are needed to protect us all. And the last one will be right here. Further complicating matters is that any appeal would be heard by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which has a significant majority of Republican-appointed judges. 6 of the court's 11 active jurists were nominated by Trump alone. Come on, man. It's a big club, and you're not in it, man. You know, like, Trump has done so much shit that should already have him put in jail for the rest of his life, but because we live in this fucking insane system and this two-tiered justice system, he is most likely going to get away with it, man. I mean, he's fucked up so much that maybe there's like a 30-40% chance that he could get arrested and have things done, but I seriously doubt it, you know? I really do. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into some really, really juicy and fucking interesting stuff going on in Europe in regards to energy. This shit is mind-boggling. This could really spell some serious fucking turmoil in Europe and specifically the UK. So the article is from Jacobin titled "Britain's strikes aren't going to end anytime soon," and the article is by Tom Blackburn. Whew, give me 1 second. Alrighty. With tens of millions facing severe hardship, if not outright destitution this winter, Britain today resembles nothing so much as a tinderbox waiting to spark. Everywhere you look, the landscape is one of ever-worsening neglect and decay. Real wages plummeting at record rates, the health service on its knees, beaches and beauty spots encrusted in shit. After more than 4 decades of Thatcherite hegemony, both major Westminster parties in its thrall, the end result is a society held together, but only just with gaffer tape. Gotta love the fucking British slang. The Office of Gas and Electricity Markets, or Ofgem, added to the misery last week with its latest energy price cap hike. From October 1st, the price cap will rise to £3,549 a year for the average household dual fuel bill, which is already fucking insane, man. £349 a year is $4,085 a year, and that's $340 a month just for energy, man. That is fucking mind-boggling. Forecasts for next year are even bleaker. One from market consultancy firm Auxilion predicted that bills would hit £5,632 a year from January, before climbing even further to £7,700 from April. That's $738 a month for energy. And it gets even crazier. Most people in Britain will not be able to pay that. It's going to be fucking chaos, man. Citizens Advice has estimated that from January, 13 million, equivalent to nearly 1 in 4 UK households, will be unable to afford their energy. The 4 million largely poorer households on prepayment meters, which very often serve to trap people in fuel poverty, faces energy costs of $714 or pounds a month by January. The working class in Britain is getting fucked by Russia cutting off their oil supply to Europe, man. And some nations are handling it better, like Germany and I think Italy I was reading about, and France, but all of them are going to get fucked. They're going to see a lot more social unrest, a lot more protests, and probably riots, man. People aren't going to be able to heat their homes. They're going to be sitting there in the cold during winter, which is most likely going to be fucking brutal because of climate change, man. A recent University of York study makes the severity of the deprivation currently facing working people brutally clear. It warns that by the new year, 2/3 of UK houses, 2/3, the majority of UK households, a mind-boggling 45 million people, will find themselves in fuel poverty, including more than 80% of large family, lone parents, and pensioner couples. Fuel poverty on this scale threatens to have disastrous effects on health, overwhelming a national health service already buckling under the strain. Health service bosses have warned of an impending humanitarian crisis. Humanitarian crisis. Sorry, I don't know why I just petered off at the end there. But the crisis is also going to be exacerbated by the fact that the UK government, which has been controlled by their right-wing section for a while now, has been very, very aggressively pushing to privatize the NHS, the National Health Service over there in the UK. So on top of budget cuts from that and the privatization of that, which always leads to worse outcomes, they are having this energy crisis, which is going to put people in the cold, which is going to get people more sick because they aren't able to properly heat their homes. There's going to just be an even bigger strain on the NHS, which is going to lead to even more dysfunction. Many businesses, too, lacking even the paltry protection of Ofgem's household energy price cap, look likely to go to the wall, threatening to unleash a wave of job losses. One survey found that 70% of pubs are not expected to survive the winter, which is gonna spell fucking chaos in Britain, bro. They love their fucking pubs and popping off one with the fucking boys, dude. 70%? They're gonna have the fucking communist revolution before anybody, dude. I'm telling you. Anyway, one survey found that 70% of pubs are not expected to survive the winter, with some pubs reporting 5-fold increases in energy bills. The prospect of living in a Britain without nearly 3/4 of its pubs is bad on its own, but worse considering that they are among the few surviving community hubs in many areas, not to mention the prospect of their staff being put out of work. A lot of people losing their jobs, not being able to heat their homes, all this shit, man. It's a recipe for either labor consolidating and showing the power of the people, or giving in to fascistic, fearful ideologies in an effort to try and stave off the suffering. With Europe staring down the barrel of a continent-wide energy crisis, French President Emmanuel Macron last week declared an end to the age of abundance, which is 100% true, man. The figures are staggering. We are entering a scary time period in the world, man, but one that may bring a better world in the long term. All we can do is hope. So with Europe staring down the barrel of a continent-wide energy crisis, French President Emmanuel Macron last week declared an end to the age of abundance, sending cosseted British pundits, who needless to say have no intention of sacrificing anything, of course, into raptures. But for some, the age of abundance is only just getting started. UK energy producers, for example, are expected to rake in excess profits worth an eye-watering £170 billion over the next 2 years alone, while ordinary people are plunged into penury. That's what happens when you make public services private, man. They try to suck up as much money as possible and try to give you as little as possible. If corporations could find a way to just have you give them money and them do not shit, that's what they would do. That's like the purest end goal of capitalism, man, is just for them to have as much as they possibly fucking can and to give you as little as possible. That's how profit incentives work. Amid all of this, much has been made of government lethargy. Of course, you'd expect a Tory leadership contest to be a carnival of reaction, and it hasn't disappointed on that front, but such has been the obsession with culture war fixations that the stark realities of the mounting crisis have barely intruded on proceedings. Liz Truss, who looks likely to win at a canter, has had nothing to offer beyond lame Thatcherite cosplay and mindless waffle about tax cuts, which would, it just so happens, primarily benefit the top 1%. And that is not surprising. I did a little bit of reading into Liz Truss, who is the presumptive next prime minister and who is a Tory. She was, man, what was she? I want to bring it up. Give me 1 second, because it's really interesting. What was her name? Sorry. Liz Truss. Liz Truss. I had an article that I was looking at. Let me see if I can find it in my history real quick. No, this is going to take too long. It's okay. I mean, basically, Liz Truss is literally just the typical fucking... It's as if she was literally manufactured in a fucking Tory making machine, bro. Like, she used to do PR for some kind of fucking... Yeah, that's what it was. She used to be a corporate PR person, man. And then right after that, she went to a Thatcherite think tank. So you know that all she's going to say is, yep, cut taxes for the wealthy, give money to corporations, fuck the poor. That's who Liz Truss is. She's the exact opposite person that the UK needs right now, man. Just a carbon copy of every other Tory, every other conservative in the UK. Who's just not there to help. Truss and her allies are, however, reportedly planning to ramp up North Sea gas drilling. Not only does this again demonstrate how beholden to climate denialism the Tory party still is, particularly abhorrent now with 33 million displaced by the floods in Pakistan, but it would do little to make energy more affordable for consumers, prices are still set by the global market. It would, however, enable energy firms to add to their astronomical profits. By pure coincidence, oil and gas producers are among the Tories' most generous donors. With Tories and Labour rightists alike having closed ranks to crush any alternative, the mounting popular anger has no political party outlet. Keir Starmer's Labour has taken flight from anything that looks like either industrial militancy or political radicalism, shunning energy renationalization, supported by nearly half of Tory voters, to reassure Britain's oligarchy that he won't do anything to upset it. No wonder, then, that the initiative to lead the pushback has fallen entirely to trade unions and extra parliamentary movements. And that's the only way things are going to get done. We talked about it in the previous article, how Lula da Silva and the PT party had been neutered by the neoliberal party, or, you know, the more liberal center-right parties and the capital that came with those parties. Because the fact of the matter is that once these politicians get put into positions of power, even if they're trying to do things for you, they get sucked into the soulless machine of capital, and they think that they have to capitulate in order to get things done, because they think that they have to operate within the levers of power to get things done, when I think that getting there and then mobilizing the people is the most important, right? So it usually is up to the people to create the change that needs to happen that benefits all of us. You cannot rely on these people, no matter how pretty and flowery their words are. There has to be a grassroots movement of labor. Due to the defeats of previous decades, the ranks of the trade union movement remain much depleted compared to what they once were. But the upsurge in strike action, with more to come, is testament to the outrage and desperation millions are feeling. Extraordinarily, an opinion poll found that 29%, or nearly a third, of people, including half of 18 to 24-year-olds, felt riots would be a justified response. Hell yeah. With hindsight, perhaps the Tories knew more than they were letting on when they preemptively clamped down on protests. Hell no. I mean, that's good, man. The U.S. has a huge problem. I mean, it's not good all the shit is happening, but it's good that people are angry and going out to protest the bullshit, man. Like, the U.S. has a huge problem of just kind of sitting there and taking it, man. Like, in Europe, even in the UK, which is kind of like the US 2.0, you know what I mean? Even the freaking politicians over there say that. In Europe, in general, there is a lot stronger union movement and labor movement in community surrounding workers' right. Now, it's not perfect, and it's been very, very, very neutered through propaganda and neoliberal fuckery over the past decades, but it's still a lot stronger than the United States. So the situation is a little bit different over there. So yeah, man, I mean, the situation in Europe is getting fucking crazy. Like, I think we're going to see a lot more territorial and fascist thinking coming from a lot of nations rising up in response to the desperation. But I also think we're going to see a rise of leftist thinking and leftist proposing solutions that could work and help things out in the long term, man. And the sad reality is that all of this could have been avoided, man. It really could. Like NATO, the US, UK, NATO at large was playing with fire when they decided to align themselves against Russia, while also Europe specifically having the majority, in some countries, the majority of their gas coming from them. It was not sustainable, and the US and some countries in NATO constantly saber rattling and trying to show Russia that they're the big dogs just kind of brought us to this situation. Now, obviously, there's problems in Russia as well, and Putin is just an oligarch, and he's kind of a monster of the political machine in the US, in the, I was going to say USSR, in Russia. So the European nations and the US can't take all the blame, but they certainly contributed to the problem. We're going to have to see what happens in the future. I'm hoping for the best, like I always do, but it's going to get rough. It's going to get really rough for the people in Europe, and specifically in the UK, because the Tories really fucked them over with Brexit and all of their just terrible economic and social policies, man. All right, now on to our last article, which is a fucking doozy, but it's also not surprising at all. So this article comes from the BBC, written by Mike Windling. Oath Keepers' leaked membership list includes police and politicians. Excuse me. Hundreds of U.S. public officials, police officers, and soldiers are or have been involved with the far-right Oath Keepers militia. Oh, excuse me. According to a report from an anti-extremism or... Give me 1 second. Let me just take a sip of my freaking tea and start this over. Oh, my goodness. Getting fucking out of breath over here. Hope everyone's doing good, by the way. If you're not following me over already, please give me a follow. I'm just starting all this shit up right now, but I think what I'm going to do is stream every day, like 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. It's just a little bit more less stressful for me than to do it like earlier in the day. It gives me more time to read up on articles and just get my shit together before I get it going. You know what I mean? All right, little sippy sip from my sippy cup of water. Little vapey vape. All right, now I'm good to go. Let's get back into the news. Let's start this shit over. So, Oath Keepers' leaked membership list includes police and politicians, by Mike Windling. Not surprising in the least, like I said. Hundreds of U.S. public officials, police officers, and soldiers are or have been involved with the far-right Oath Keepers militia, according to a report from an anti-extremism organization. The Anti-Defamation League's Center on Extremism compared the names from a leak of Oath Keepers' membership rolls with public records and social media. Oath Keepers are accused of playing a key role in last year's Capitol riots. The reports raises fresh concerns about the presence of extremist ideology in law enforcement and the military. Now, if you've been living under a rock or just aren't very politically aware, the Oath Keepers are 100% a terrorist organization, man. Some members of their organization brought literal fucking bombs to the Capitol during January 6th, man. And there's videos of them doing like military movements in there. They were trying to straight up get in there and kill motherfuckers. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, man. They're fucking dangerous as hell. They are literal brown shirt fascists. Last year, a whistleblower group called Distributed Denial of Secrets published more than 38,000 names on the Oath Keepers membership list. They're fucking gigantic, man. Right-wing militarism and militias are a huge problem. They're the FBI's, or they used to be. I think they might have taken it off because they're fucking pussies, but they used to be the top threat, or identified as the top threat to national security or internally by the FBI. Right-wing terrorism is huge in the U.S. There's been thousands and thousands of, or maybe not thousands, I gotta look it up on Wikipedia, but a whole fucking lot. Many people have died to right-wing terrorism, more than Islamic extremism. And in fact, last time I looked it up, there has literally been 0 terrorist attacks from the left since 2001 at least. So keep that in mind when they try to tell you that they're doing all this to defend from Antifa and Black Bloc and the dangerous radical left. Yeah, right. It's all fucking projection, as always with these fucking right-wing lunatics. All right, let's start back up here. Last year, a whistleblower group called Distributed Denial of Secrets published more than 38,000 names on the Oath Keepers membership list, although experts estimate that the group's current active membership is much lower. Analysis of the leaked data by the Anti-Defamation League identified 81 people across the country who currently hold public office or are running in November's midterm elections. Fucking insane, dude. Researchers also found that nearly 400 current law enforcement officers and more than 1,000 former officers are connected to the group, along with more than 100 current serving military personnel. So it's not necessarily surprising to me that the Oath Keepers have infiltrated the military and the police. Like, that's basically old news, man. Like, the KKK, back during their resurgence in the late 1910s to the 1930s, they did the same thing, man. There was a huge problem, as well as problems with government officials being a part of the KKK, and it just caused a lot of problems. We're just kind of seeing history repeat itself, man. That's always the case when education isn't a priority in a nation and when the truth isn't a priority to the government. And on top of that, policing in the United States kind of has a special racist history. I'm sure that a lot of you are aware that in southern states in particular, slave catching patrols were converted into local police stations in order to still enforce a racial hierarchy. And the legacy of that just continues on to this day with right-wing extremism and fascism, man. It's a huge problem in the United States, and until we as a nation can kind of, and specifically white Americans can kind of grapple with that dark past, the same shit is just going to keep on happening over and over again, man. And I don't want to put too much onus on white America as a whole, though, because they are suffering just as much as the colored people in America. Colored, I don't know. That sounds like fucking old-timey. As much as people of color are suffering in the United States, man. People are suffering all over the world. There are more working poor whites than there are people of color who are working poor, you know? But the whole problem is that instead of coming together and seeing our commonality and our common struggle, people with nefarious goals and people who have old school reactionary fascist ways of thinking divide us, so it makes it harder for us to address these problems. You know what I mean? The whole stupid fucking culture war and all this shit is just a way to keep us from creating communities that challenge power and speak truth to power, you know? Others in the report, however, have more definitive ties to the group, such as Wendy Rogers, a state senator from Arizona who has publicly declared her membership. Ms. Rogers, who has repeated false claims that Donald Trump won the 2020 presidential election, is running for re-election in November. More than a dozen members of the group were charged earlier this year in connection with the January 6th riot storming the U.S. Capitol by supporters of former President Donald Trump. A former Oath Keepers spokesperson told a congressional committee investigating the Capitol attack that the group has come to embrace white nationalists and other straight-up racists. I think we've gotten exceedingly lucky that more bloodshed did not happen because the potential has been there from the start, Jason Von Tattenhove said in a July testimony before the committee. He's exactly right, man. And I'm no cop lover, bro. You know what I mean? I think The vast majority of them are fucking pigs or hogs, like fucking Hassan likes to call them. But if those cops had let more of those violent extremists in the Capitol, I guarantee you they would have killed those fucking politicians, man. And then the right wingers would not be able to have this plausible deniability that they love to use regarding January 6th, man. And they are planning these things, man. There is a huge network of white right-wing extremists and militia members who are just waiting for the opportune moment, man. And that's why it's especially scary for me having people like Ron DeSantis, who is a competent fascist, vying for power and gaining traction, man. Ron DeSantis has the potential to take what Donald Trump did and push it even further and bring full-on authoritarianism into U.S. politics, man. It's fucking scary, and there are plenty of people who want that to happen. We have to be vigilant, and the left has to make counter organizations to this, man. The left, you'll see this all throughout history, man. The left loves to talk theory, but they hate to act. That is what we have to do. It always disappoints me to see these other streamers like on the left, like Vosh and Hassan, specifically those two because they're so big, and especially Hassan, who accumulate all these resources and accumulate all this popularity, but really don't do enough to spread the message and create coalitions, man. And a lot of people will say that, oh, it's just entertainment and blah, 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 blah. But no, they have a real, even though it may be small comparatively, they have a real chance and, in my opinion, obligation to practice what they preach, man. You know, like if my streams, if this shit pops off, I'm telling you, like, the vast majority of my time is going to be going to organizing, man. And it should be on every leftist agenda to unionize the workplace, try to make tenant unions, try to bring the community together to combat this rise of fascism and authoritarianism, man. Because if we're not there, the fascists are. And the reactionary politics are a lot easier to get sucked into than the more sober-headed, rational, but albeit a bit more complicated ideology of the left, man. We have to do better at combating this type of stuff. Alrighty, so those are our articles for the day. If you are not following, please follow. We do 3 articles in the first section, and then we do a bunch of reaction videos in the second half. Oh, damn, I think my freaking camera just died, which is a perfect opportunity for me to take a 5-minute little break. I'm going to be back in 5 minutes, maybe 10. We're going to charge up the camera, and then we're going to get into some reaction videos, so stay tuned. And again, if you aren't following, please follow. I'm going to be streaming. I'm going to start out streaming probably every day between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. So keep it posted, and I'll be back in about 10 minutes. And I'm going to get a fucking better camera battery that doesn't die soon so I can stream longer. So look forward to me not fucking constantly having to scramble around. Alrighty, I'm back. We are going to get into some great content. I love that freaking word. Content. We got videos with Dave Rubin, freaking some cops being copy cops, stuff with Matt Walsh, some stuff about the drought going on and how it affects farmers, and some really fucking weird shit from Jordan Peterson, man. I feel bad for Jordan Peterson. I feel like he is, ever since that fucking coma he's been in his own fucking kind of mental fucking hellscape prison, dude. It's some scary shit. I would not want to be him. But all right, let's start out with our favorite freaking self-hating gay guy, Dave Rubin. He goes on Fox News to talk about California and how much he totally hates it, and he's totally not a lib. And he's definitely not doing all of this bullshit for money. Just keep that in mind. He is not a grifter. Get into it. Now, I will say, I don't particularly like Gavin Newsom. I don't think he's done a great job. He's really just kind of like, he's not as bad as some of the more libby fucking governors, but he's just still a lib, man. He doesn't really do enough to help people, and he's also an elitist. We'll get to that, but Rubin's criticism is just fucking stupid and goes in the completely wrong direction. He's not wrong. I mean, that's not a gotcha, though. I mean, the world is a complicated place. You can try to limit like things happen, man, and reducing electricity consumption right now will help with what's going on. You know what I mean? It's just typical Fox News bullshit, man. Trying to spin everything that anybody who's not a fucking fascist or a right-wing fucking lunatic as some kind of crazy fucking socialism and communism. God, I hate him. He's like, I'm gay, but I'm still just like you guys. I'm not like those commies in California. Please like and subscribe. That title would definitely go to Ron Fascist DeSantis, bro. Come on, not even close. This man's fucking out there banning abortions and fucking banning books, basically book burning like a straight up fucking Nazi, dude. Come on. Fucking Newsom said to not use your car as much. Oh my fucking god. Somebody get him out of there. He is out of fucking control. I mean, he is a hypocrite. Don't get me wrong. Gavin Newsom is a hypocrite. He's a typical elitist, but they're just doing this fucking, oh, boo, liberals, everything they do sucks, and it's just stupid. That's not necessarily Gavin Newsom's fault, though. You know, it has more to do with just, I mean, like all us lefties love to talk about. It just has to do with the way that capitalism is structured, and especially in a place like California where rent is so astronomically fucking high, the cost of living is so high. It's on top of a mix of them, yes, having a social safety net that is a little bit better than some parts of the US. Don't get me wrong, it's still fucking horrible, especially compared to some places like Denmark and other places in Europe, but it's that combination of a slightly better social safety net with also the insane cost of living just makes people migrate there when they're in a desperate situation so that they have at least a little bit more of a quote unquote leg up, which is not really. It's just scraps giving out to the fucking poors, but I digress. There we go again with the fucking classic just denial and minimization of the fucking global catastrophe that is climate change. Come on, man. There's been like fucking biblical floods all over the fucking world. When are you gonna get with the program, dude? They can't be paying you that much where you're willing to let the fucking world that your future children and just crater into fucking oblivion, bro. Come on. You gotta have more of a backbone than that. I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures, man. What the fuck do you expect? The way that things are working right now is exactly why climate change is happening. Oh, damn. I got you, bro. Give me 2 seconds. Damn, I might have to start that whole fucking shit over. God damn it. It's all good. All right. Yeah, so I mean, this clip is basically just Dave Rubin doing his usual Dave Rubin shit, getting paid to say obvious fucking lies and stab himself in the back for some freaking political points and money from the right, dude. And he's shitting on California because he's like, that's what he is to the right. He's a former liberal from California who knows what's up, you know. Let's get into it.
California Governor
Follow me, by the way, and I'll love you forever.
Gavin Newsom facing criticism over his tone-deaf message as the state faces an extreme heat wave.
Californians, you've stepped up to help in a big way to keep the lights on so far. But we're heading to the worst part of this heat wave, and the risk for outages is real. And
if you haven't looked into the shit happening in California, I mean, across the world, like I said, fucking insane floods everywhere. But California, even more so than usual, is just getting absolutely fucking whammied with this heat wave, dude. Fires everywhere, blackouts, energy problems, man. Dude, the world is getting straight up apocalyptic, man. And like I said, if we don't do shit to change it soon, civilization is going bye-bye.
It's immediate. Everyone has to do their part to help step up for just a few more days.
Newsom also urging people to, get this, refrain from charging their electric vehicles. But catch-22, his state is only selling EVs by 2035. Here to react.
And like I said, this is not like a freaking gotcha. Like, there's multiple things that need to be done to address the climate crisis. And it being a crisis that's unpredictable, you have to adapt to the situation. You know what I mean? Like, yes, like limiting the electricity is what they need to do right now to not further exacerbate the problem. You know what I mean? Those two ideas aren't mutually exclusive. You can do what you have to do now to prevent further devastation down the line while also planning for the future so the devastation doesn't continue to amalgamate into a bigger monster that we can't address properly, which it kind of already is. Ben H, I can't hear. Oh, wait. Did you see Palin lost her election? Yes. Hell yeah, dude. You are right. Such a fucking relief, man. Like, it's scary with all this shit going on, all the fascism on the rise, all these right-wing insane people who are admittedly getting wins in. But I don't think that this decade and more broadly the next coming decades are going to be a repeat of what we saw during the rise of fascism in the 1940s and 50s, specifically because we have the internet, and we also have people who have lived through this before, or we have the benefit of hindsight now, and that on top of the internet, I think we're going to see a rise in fascism and see a rise in authoritarianism, but I also think we're going to see a much stronger reaction from the left and even more coalition building. And since it's so much easier to propagate since it's so much easier to propagate our information, and people are generally untrustful of typical authority figure out into the zeitgeist and defeat this coming rise of the brown shirts and the fascists. But hell yeah, fucking Palin is like one of the worst, and I can't believe that she was ever considered a like national politician in the first place, man. She's like a bumbling, blubbering fucking moron, dude. It's just like, I don't know, man. Some of the politicians that get elevated to these positions, especially on the right, I'm like, did you guys even like, are you guys just looking at her titties, or did you actually read or like listen to what the fuck she's saying? They're just mesmerized by the fucking gazonka donkas, dude. They just don't give a fuck. They're like, she's hot and she's not a leftist, so fuck it, I'll vote for her.
Dave Rubin, the host of the Rubin Report. Dave, you just can't make it up. What's your reaction to all this?
Well, I do hope that it says below me right down here, former Californian, now proud Floridian, but let's be clear.
That's what I was fucking ragging on him earlier before I fucking forgot to put on the desktop audio. It's like, dude, come on. Stop with the fucking shtick, dude. It is so fucking cringeworthy. We get it, man. You don't like California. You used to be a lib. Now you're fucking have the fucking puppet of the right wing and the fucking Koch brothers, and all you're doing is up your ass speaking for you so you can make all the money, man. We get it.
About something. Gavin Newsom is without question the
so
worst
fake too, dude.
in the United States. This is all.
And like I said, that title definitely goes to Ron DeSantis, man. Come on. He has been doing some fucking insane shit over there in Florida, man. Florida, I would be scared to go there. Not scared to go there, man, but it's just like I traveled around a little bit before I ended up settling back here in Colorado, man. Places where these really far-right governors and governments within the states are really starting to feel like a whole different country, man. It's scary, dude. Like, they're doing a whole lot worse shit than to ask people to not fucking use as much energy, I'm telling you.
Obvious. This is an extension of all of his policies, and it's completely consistent with this guy's track record. Let's not forget what his job was before he became governor. He was mayor of San Francisco, and everyone watching knows what a dystopian nightmare San Francisco is right now.
And like I said, that's not necessarily his fault. I do put blame on both the Democratic and Republican Party. They're both just center-right, pro-capitalist parties that don't give a shit about any of the shit happening there. You know what I mean? And like I said, I think there's two big factors as to why California, and specifically more like West Coast / Midwest states have problems with homelessness, is because they do have a typically better social safety nets than places like in the Rust Belt and in the South. And on top of that, so you have these people going over there, and then on top of that, you have an insane, astronomical cost of living. So you have people who aren't transplants from other states getting priced out of the market and unfortunately getting pushed into homelessness and destitution, and people who are already homeless and destitute migrating there because it gives them just a very slightly higher standard of despair, you know?
So of course this was coming, you know, and he can pretend, okay, this is the worst heat wave ever. But yes, it does at the end of summer and into early fall, it does get really hot often.
Again, with the climate change denial, it's like, oh, it just gets hot. No, man, fucking forests on fire and fucking cities being underwater is not just fucking business as usual, man. Fucking wake up, dude. I mean, he knows this. He's literally just a grifter who doesn't give a shit if the world burns as long as he can make some money while it's burning.
In California, this is what progressives do. They tell you we've got these green new policies. We're going to do all this stuff for the environment. All we'll need is more tax money from you and not to use air conditioning and other electric utilities, things of that nature.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, man. The system cannot stay the way that it is without assured destruction. We're gonna have to buckle down and do things that are uncomfortable, and it's like, if we just mobilize as a nation and had a concerted, organized effort to combat this, it would not be much of a difference in the standard of living, you know? It's just that the tendrils of corporate profiteering have invaded our public spaces and public utilities, man. How uncomfortable are you willing to get? Man, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think I'm a good indicator for the average person, because I've been homeless before, man. I've been homeless multiple times. I've been really fucked up, dude. Like, but in general, like, I think what's necessary is, I mean, all of the onus really isn't on the average person, right? It's more on corporations. Like, they account for like over 70% of emissions that are killing the world. But yes, our consumption feeds these corporations, so it does have to change. I mean, a big thing is that there's just so many redundant operations going on because of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Because of the competitive, damn, come on, what is it? Like, the competitive environment of capitalism, where you have a bunch of companies manufacturing the same things. Most of the time, they aren't made in the most efficient way, and it drains resources and burns fossil fuels where they don't need to be burned. So I mean, and I'm a communist, you know, and my ideal version of that, and I don't know how much you understand communism or whatever, but communism is like a process, you know what I mean, where and that, I mean, that would cut it down significantly, I think. But on top of that, you also have to, I think a thing that is going to be difficult would be getting Americans out of the like car mindset and putting a much more bigger emphasis on public transportation. You know, that would definitely greatly decrease the amount of fossil fuels within the nation and the world, you know. And Europe is a lot better with this in a lot of places. Expectation is a big one. The kind of whittling down of all these unnecessary production, is another thing. And I mean, realistically, right now, I don't even know, man. It's very, very fucking complicated, and I'd have to like look at what more experts are saying about what we can do right now. But like, in a perfect world, man, it's just, we wouldn't have all this fucking useless fucking garbage being produced and this pointless competition for the sake of personal wealth and power. I mean, that's just the root of most of the problems in the world, man. You know what I mean? It's, I'm gonna get my bag and fuck the consequences, you know? We're gonna have to see what we can do as things go on, man. I gotta read more into it and get more educated on it, you know?
And of course, then he puts out this video while he's wearing a fleece.
Ah, shit. My fucking camera just died, but we'll go ahead and just do it without the freaking camera.
In California. And there is just simply no way that his house is less than 78 degrees, as he's asking everyone else to. And I have no doubt that Nancy Pelosi.
I mean, he's not wrong, man. He's probably doing the typical politician shit where it's like, you guys suffer, you guys take one for the team, I'll be in my mansion getting my dick sucked. You know what I mean? Like, he's not wrong, but again, Dave Rubin and all these Fox News types, they focus on the wrong bullshit just for their own sick fucking twisted propaganda.
and Eric Swalwell and the rest of them who are all pretending that they're going to do what they're saying.
Well,
that
Dave,
they're all obviously blasting.
To be fair, we don't know exactly where he filmed that video with him in the fleece. It could have been the French Laundry. We're unclear on that part. But you know,
shut the fuck up.
Gavin Newsom, in California, there is an electric grid crisis. There's a homeless crisis. There's a crime crisis. And yet people are saying that he could be the next president of the United States to challenge Joe Biden. Why him?
There's an
Yeah, only liberals are saying that. Like, Gavin Newsom would get fucking creamed. Like, he has the personality of a fucking slimy fucking car salesman. You know what I mean? He's not the worst politician in the world, but he mostly just panders to Californians because they are nominally more left than most of the country. If he was in a different state, he would be saying something else. He's just a typical career politician, man, and people see right through his bullshit, you know?
Extraordinary privilege in the United States. It's actually the only privilege I think that really exists, which is Democrat privilege. You can basically, as a Democrat, do everything wrong, cause endless disaster after disaster, whether it's the homelessness in Cali or the drug.
Fucking projection much, dude. Are you serious? The whole point of the right wing is to fuck over as many people as possible. In communism, they did a very good job of turning children against their parents to kickstart their communist revolution. We've been working on that in the US, but we still have a lot of work to do. Well, yeah, man. I mean, I think that the goal should be to get as many people on our side as possible across generations, across racial and ethnic boundaries. But unfortunately, here in the United States, boomers and to a lesser extent Generation X have been very, very, very mesmerized by the propaganda and the corporate machine where, you know, I've been reading Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, where they really truly think that capitalism is it. We're at the end of history, like Francis Fukuyama said in his book, you know. So there's a lot of deprogramming that needs to take place. Like, I don't want any kind of violence towards anybody or any kind of crazy shit happening, because at the end of the day, violence hurts our public perception, and it feeds into the McCarthyite kind of attitudes that are still permeated in the boomer generation. You know what I mean? Why did kids turn against their parents? Well, what he's talking about is I think what he's talking about is a revolution in Russia specifically. Maybe. I mean, like, it's just what I was talking about, like the generational divide on politics. A lot of the times, older generations tend to be more conservative, at least in the context of our current history, you know, but it was that way back in the day too. Like, example would be in Germany when they still had the Tsar. A lot of the older generation was attached to that mentality of like a strong nation led by a strong leader. You know what I mean? So it's always a struggle. I mean, that's the history of the world, man. The struggle for progress is usually hindered by those who are used to the conditions that they are in. You know what I mean? But shit, let's get back into it.
Drugs or the failing schools or roads, the environmental disaster, and you seemingly move up the ladder. As I said, he went from San Francisco as the mayor to the governor, and it seems like president will be the next stop. In a weird way, that's almost the fight that America needs. It's like, okay, if the Democrats are going all in on social justice, all in on these backwards environmental policies, all in on the
right, man. Like, it's always a struggle, man. I always like to make the analogy that Richard Wolff makes. In the beginning of civilization, you had the slave-master relationship. And honestly, I think the thousands of years of history that we have been through is a struggle to rid ourselves of the slave-master relationship. Thousands of years ago,
communism is based
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Thank you for the follow. We're going to get this 100 years, Prolcast. But anyway, what I think is that there's a struggle, right? First, we had the master-slave relationship. Fast forward a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 years, and then we had the serf-lord relationship. And now, at this point in the struggle for the common man's emancipation, we have the worker-capitalist relationship. You know what I mean? And throughout all of this, you're going to have people who want to benefit from the systems of control, people who are brainwashed from the propaganda by the system of control, and people who just don't have the imagination to imagine anything outside of that system of control. It's a constant struggle. It's a epic battle that all of humanity has been fighting since the beginning of our descent from hunter-gatherers to civilization-building people. So let's get this video is going off the rails. I'm not even talking about this shit, just talking about the fucking history of all this shit. But let's finish this up real quick.
Ineptitude. Well, then, okay, they are telling you what they are. And then the Republicans have to say what they are. I think it starts here in Florida with Ron DeSantis and freedom. But that may be.
He said, Ben H says, it's not necessarily about deprogramming. It's more about disruption. Start our own communist revolution. No, I 100% agree, man. And yeah, China has a really, really fucking crazy history, man. And that kind of leads, it has a very violent history. It has a history where there was constant revolutions and struggles. Like, you should read about, I mean, I'm sure you know a little bit, know a decent amount about it, but Yezniak, you should definitely look into it, man. It's very, very interesting. And every nation has their own history and own past that changes how we need to operate in terms of bringing about social justice and change. You know what I mean? I definitely think that capitalism seems the same as communism. They're just two different words. I have to disagree, man. I don't know how politically engaged or aware you are, but there's been a lot of propaganda against communism over the past, I mean, basically since it gained popularity in countries like Russia and Latin America, like Russia and China in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and Latin America in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And there's been a concerted global effort by corporations and imperialist, capitalist governments to dissuade and destroy communism and socialism anywhere it is. You'll see that in the 1950s and 60s, Latin America was kind of being persuaded by the USSR and the Soviet bloc to embrace socialism and, in some instances, communism. And they were having a boon. They were rising up on the geopolitical economic ladder because of the systems put in place that were more fair. Things like nationalizing public services so everyone had what they needed, having guaranteed jobs program, universal basic income. That's what socialism and communism are about. And the people who want to keep our system the same way that it is so they can continue to benefit and prosper off of people's despair, there's just so much history in Latin America. They were devastated by the CIA's infiltration of those governments and overthrow of those governments to install puppet governments that would bend to the will of capital. A good example I was just talking about earlier in the program is Brazil. They had Brazil and Chile have very similar stories where they had a rising left and the government over here, all levers of the government. John F. Kennedy, specifically in Brazil, had in a secret recording had specifically said that they wanted to stop the left in Brazil and that they were going to back the far-right candidate because he had the popular support in the military. And so they do that. They take away all the social programs that Brazil had, the stuff that I just mentioned, like nationalizing their institutions like energy and whatever, so they could fund social programs. They took all that away when the U.S. installed their puppet dictator. They let U.S. corporations take control of all of those nationalized sectors so they could profit off of it. And the people in Brazil who had their own private enterprises, as well as the old elite, benefited off of that as well, while the people suffered. That is the battle that we're fighting right now. Greed versus community-oriented government. That's what capitalism versus communism is, at least to me. Capitalism, in a way, still benefits the people up from above. For people who are not elite, it's a lot more difficult for them to rise up. Yeah, you're exactly right, man. And that's the world. The world that I want to live in is a world where there are no elites. I don't know if it's going to happen 50 years from now, 1,000 years from now, but the fight that we fight cannot stop until everyone is liberated, man. That's the way it is. That's the way it is for me, at least. All right, let's try to freaking finish this fucking video.
Is the fight that we need. And look, Gavin Newsom, it's pretty simple. 2020 and 2021 were the first years in California's history that it ever had a loss of population. Hundreds of thousands of people, including a lot of the higher.
I think that really has to do with higher costs of living and the crazy shit going on with the climate. It's dangerous to live in California because of the shit. You don't know if your house is going to burn down, you're going to lose everything. On top of that, rents, across the United States are rising, but California, I don't even understand how anybody lives there who doesn't make under like fucking $150,000 a year. And even people making that much struggle to live there because it's just so insane. And that really, it doesn't have anything to do specifically with the Democrats, like specifically the Democrats. It's just about the neoliberal ways of thinking that has infected our government, where most public problems are partitioned off and they try to fix it with private solutions. Yeah, women don't want to give birth. It's for a good reason. Yeah, exactly, man. The world is a scary fucking place right now. Like, I don't know if in 50 years countries are going to run out of water and there's going to be wars over water that devastate the entire earth. Like, we're in a very unstable position right now. And like I said, the cost of living is insane in California, and the solution to that is rent control. Like, I live in Colorado and my rent just got raised from $1,100 to $1,400. For what? Like, my apartment is a piece of shit. You know what I mean? I rent it out with a roommate, so it's a little bit easier. But a little tiny, nothing special apartment should not cost $1,400. And in California, the same apartment that I'm in right now, it would probably cost double, if not more, man. So that's a problem with capitalism. It has nothing to do with fucking woke politics and blah, 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 blah. It's all this identity politics bullshit is such a fucking distraction. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to focus on some parts of identity politics and culture, because we do need people to be more culturally progressive so that people who are marginalized, like the LGBT community and people of color, have a better existence. But the right weaponizes that and feeds the hatred in people's hearts so they don't focus on the problems that are actually facing the country. Yes, and Nack says, women want to use reason. Celibacy movement on the rise. Roe v. Wade fucked it up more. Yeah, dude. Like, I mean, the Roe v. Wade decision for me, or at least in my opinion, was a huge wake-up call for the less politically engaged in our country, and specifically those more on the liberal side, and even those on the conservative side too, because a lot of conservatives are for abortion. You just have an extreme movement on the right that's growing that has fucked it up for everybody else. And you know, because of the right has a long history of gerrymandering and election tampering. There's a projection again, from them. It's easier for them to have minority rule and do all this crazy shit that people don't like, on top of the fact that the Supreme Court is just a fucked up system. Like, you have a bunch of geriatric fucking hospital patients deciding the fate of hundreds of millions of people. It just doesn't make any sense,
Earners who give all that tax money to the state, they have fled. And where do they live right now? And where are they building businesses? Florida, Tennessee, Texas. I myself took 2 businesses and many.
Like I said, it's not because California is some kind of woke hellscape. It's literally just because it's cheaper there. Those are places that are genuinely more cheaper. Yeah.
Employees out of California just a year ago, and now I'm in Florida.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they call voting with your feet. There are so many people that are moving to Florida who are once from states like Illinois, California, New York, because of high taxes, high crime. People want to go to Florida instead of the places that they once were. But you originally did live in California, and it is true, right, that there are longstanding issues with the electrical grid. It almost happens every single summer, like clock.
Right, and so she brought up the electrical grid again. When you put public utilities in the hand of private companies, their main goal is to make money, not provide adequate infrastructure. They do as little as possible to not even maintain the infrastructure and charge more and more and more for the energy that should be free. We come on, man. We have all of this technology and all of these resources. We should, at the bare minimum, have a place to stay, energy, energy to heat our homes, and provide us with some kind of basic standard of living, Ben H100 says, I think it's very important we keep giving little children and young adults puberty blockers. Also, when you show that parents can't be all interested in they're going through. Change their pronouns while hiding it from their parents. They're going to get our communist utopia. I see. This guy is a troll. This man is a troll. Listen, bro. I'm not like one of those streamers who tries to dunk on people and be like, oh, you're such a fucking idiot. I really do genuinely want people to be more, come to my side and understand why I believe the things that I do, man. So puberty blockers are not permanent, bro. Like, and there's nowhere in the country where they're chopping little kids' dicks off and giving them fake titties, man. Like, that's just not what happens, I think it's important, like, if we really do believe in freedom, we should allow people to express themselves the way that they want to express themselves. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing inherently, like, sexually fucked up about a child wanting to express themselves a way that they were not assigned at birth. And if we want the overall highest amount of happiness in our society, we have to look at statistics. And statistically, when children who feel gender dysphoria and feel like they are non-binary or a gender that is not what they were assigned at birth, if you give them counseling, if you give them the opportunity to do these things, then they have better outcomes, less risk of suicide, less risk of depression. So for me, I mean, I have no problem with that at all. Everybody do what the fuck they want to do. Yeah, and I do think, obviously, they should be an adult before they make life-altering decisions that are unreversible. But puberty blockers are reversed. It just prevents puberty from happening. Like the name says, up until the point where they're ready to make their decision. And it's as simple as that, man. If you want people to be happy, you let them do what they want to do within reason. And I think that's perfectly reasonable, man. Like, it's none of my business. And we need to also realize that while there are some things that children don't have the capacity to understand and fully grasp, they're still human beings with their own agency, and we need to take their feelings and emotions seriously, Yeah.
work, and this is absolutely no surprise that it's happening once again. Dave, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, well, that video is over. YesNX says, I have no problem with transgender people, but they should wait for the kids to turn 18. Kids are new to the world and still developing. Yeah, no, I definitely, well, I agree, like I said, that surgery and unalterable things, you should wait until you're an adult. But here's a good example, right? So, and I think this is harder for men or harder for people who are male and assigned a man at birth, transitioning into a female, because if they don't have those puberty blockers as a child, you can have the hormones, you can do all that stuff, but you still have the bone structure of a man, and that can really exacerbate dysphoria for people. Like I said, it's about limiting the harm, and puberty blockers don't harm people. They really don't. It's something that, yeah, surgery, yeah, exactly, man. We're on the same page. Hell yeah, bro. Alrighty, so this freaking segment kind of went off the rails a little bit. We barely talked about the video, but that's okay. We got a little fucking of it in there. What video should I do now? How about this? I'll let you choose, Yesniak. We got a little video about freaking just cops, being fucking assholes, trying to be the big boys in charge. We got some Matt Walsh shit where he's freaking scared of gay cartoons. I don't know if you know who Matt Walsh is, but he's really fucking weird. He calls himself a fucking theocratic fascist, which basically means he wants the Christian version of the Taliban here in the United States. So he's a great guy. Then we got a little video from Vice about the drought going on and the coming food crisis and ranchers. And then we have some really weird shit from fucking Jordan Peterson. He's got some mental shit going on, bro. What are you thinking? What do you want to take a look at? If you don't have any preference, bro, I'll just start the shit up in a minute here. What do it? Vice drought? Hell yeah, man. That's what I was thinking too. Let's get into it. You got good taste.
He doesn't have a gun or a lasso, but he's adept on horseback and travels from cattle ranch to cattle ranch, where he rounds up cows to bring them to auction. In East Texas, where he lives, the region is littered with ranches, which are...
Just for a little background into this story before we go, man, it's slow, the comments for some reason on your end. Huh. Maybe it's because I'm streaming to YouTube and Twitch. I have no idea. I'll figure it out and make this shit more streamlined as I go along, bro. But I was just going to say a little preamble to this video. So droughts are severely affecting the food supply, or they're about to severely affect the food supply in the United States. We've seen a little bit of that happening with some, grocery stores struggling to restock their shelves. But I read a little bit on it maybe like a couple of months ago, man, and it's like, it's getting so bad where they have to, where basically it's not profitable to run a farm anymore, and the drought is exacerbating this because now they're having to kill off some of the animals because they just can't, they don't have the water to take care of them. It's insane, man. And like I said, this is what happens when you make freaking food something that you need to survive, a commodity, man. It's just, there's bound to be a crisis that fucks up the supply if it's not oriented towards human need, and instead it's oriented towards profit.
They're usually a lot greener than they are right now. What does it normally look like here?
Well, it's normally grass is this tall and green, and not brown.
It's a little brown.
Yeah, it's real brown.
Well, how bad are things right now?
I think they're real bad.
Man, no hate, but this dude is the most fucking Texas guy I've ever seen in my life, man. He's real bad. Highly concerned about the food supply. The idea of creating my own food garden in my backyard is rising. Oh, hell yeah, man. Me too, man. If I didn't live in a freaking apartment building and I had a yard, I'd be doing that shit. I mean, my whole philosophy is that we need to really start building systems outside of our normal purview to deal with this shit, man. We need to build this. We need to build our communities up so we don't have to rely on private corporations and the government to help us out, because that's exactly what they want, and they got us into this situation, man, you know?
Really bad.
Really bad.
Cattle ranching is a water-intensive business. A single cow can consume as much as 30 gallons of water each day. But in Texas, there just hasn't been enough to go around this year.
I was in Texas for about 2 months living in my van. Maybe a couple months. No, literally last month, man. And it was fucking brutal. I literally felt like I stepped into the pit of hell. It was like 110 degrees every fucking day in San Antonio, man. Like, if you want to see where climate change is fucking hitting, Texas, man. Like, actually, let me pull up the fucking, give me 1 second. There's a drought chart that shows how just how fucking bad it is there. Drought, Texas. Let's see if we can find some pictures on Google Images. Yeah, yep, this one right here, man. God damn it. Look at this shit, man. Like, almost all of Texas is in a drought, but you see the dark red and red spaces. That's extreme and exceptional, man. Like, it is turning into like a fucking... It's borderline inhospitable down there, man. It's fucking scary. And Texas does produce a lot of the country's food supply, man. There's a lot of farms down there, and they're struggling with this heat. It's changing the climate down there, where once fertile lands are now infertile. It's scary.
More than half of the state is currently undergoing severe to exceptional drought conditions, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. When the drought is this bad, what sort of effects does it have on the ranching industry?
Oh, it's just, economical. Cows run out of something to eat, and then, you got to think about the winter, and you got to think about what hay's going to cost. The hay that you usually bale, that you're not baling, that you're having to buy, that's costing 2 times.
See, that's what I'm saying, man. With the heat, it's harder to keep the animals alive because they're not used to those conditions, and they have to use more water, use more resources, where, like I said, they're just not making a profit. So sometimes they end up not fertilizing the food that they need to fertilize and just letting it die because they don't have the capacity to, distribute it and get it in a distributable form. And they're losing animals, man. Yesnak said, I'm in Florida. We hit the 90s. And Florida is humid as fuck, dude. I've only visited there once, and it was brutal. I cannot imagine. Like I said, I'm in Colorado right now, and where I am, it's usually like low 80s and nice and dry. That's where I gotta be, bro. I mean, I'm like a winter boy. I hate the heat, dude. I seriously do.
As much, or 3 times as much. And I have seen some people putting out hay to their cows right now.
It's very early.
Very, very early. Considering, you usually start in the middle of December. You start right now, where we're at 1st of August, it's going to be a long winter.
Damn,
how do you
man.
stay in business?
That's going to be a good question.
See what I'm talking about? Shit, man.
For months, ranchers held out hope that the rain would come. But with winter looming and still not enough water or food to go around, Texas ranchers have had little choice but to sell off cows they can no longer afford to care for.
Now 72, 30, 42, now 2, now 3, now 3, now 30, 42, Harold 2X,
This is the most Texas fucking shit ever, man. If the situation wasn't so fucking dire, bro, I'd be laughing my ass off. Who wants this cow? Come on, take this cow.
74 pounds, 75, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8.
I'm at the largest cattle auction house in Eastern
Yeah,
Texas.
he's got a fucking smile on his
auction
face.
today started at 11 a.m. It's expected to go into the night, which is way later than normal. But right now, so many ranchers are settling their cattle because of the drought that there's a line of trailers around the outside just to get cows into the holding pen over there.
I mean, we are going to see a drastic change to the way things operate. Whether if it's a shift to the left or right, that's still up in the air. But what's the way that the world is, the trajectory that the world is on right now, it not be sustained, and it won't be sustained, you know? And like I keep on harping on, we as leftists need to really make sure we build these coalitions so that fascists don't take control and use this chaos as a way to further entrench the world into the politics of power and greed, you know? I feel so bad for the animals. Oh, I know, man. They're already getting fucking chopped up and eaten by us, man. You'd want, at least they could be fucking cool and have some water, man. It's fucked up, man.
Is it normal for there to be this many cattle up for auction?
No, this really, people are having to sell their cows to keep them from basically starving to death, or from having to put the extra money into them. Where
Insane,
they no longer
man.
become a business. You can only put so much money into a business before the business goes bankrupt.
How many cows did you sell today?
18. I got to reduce my volume. You know.
Damn,
I ain't got
man.
no grass, so.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. I mean, like, you saw let's bring that shit up again. You saw that it's basically affecting everywhere in Texas. So where are they going to sell the cows, man? All the land is getting to the point where it's unfarmable, you know? There's some crazy shit coming, I'm telling you, man. The shit happening in Europe. I mean, food supply all over the world is fucked up. Like, I bring up Europe, like in Ukraine, some countries, almost 100% of their wheat comes from the Ukraine. And because of the war, you know, they can't get it out. So, I mean, there's a global food crisis that's on the horizon.
I ain't gonna grow no more this year. So I got 4 places, and on 2 places I got 2 ponds. It's completely dry, no water.
Yeah, I mean, some of the cows that were coming through here today were having trouble just walking through.
Trash cow, wheat. No grass.
I feel you, man. I feel you. Poor fucking cows, man. Damn, you see this one right here, dude? That's sad, man. That's really sad. The whole world's getting fucked up because of human greed, bro.
And cowboys ain't got the money to feed them.
Paul Craycraft, who runs the auction house, hasn't just noticed a sharp increase in sales. He's also seen a simultaneous drop in the number of ranchers looking to buy cattle.
Right, because of the stuff we just said, man.
Our cow run would be somewhere around 250 to 300 cows this time of the year. We're selling from 600 to 700 cows. On a normal year,
man.
half or 60% of those cows out of the 300 would go back home to some other producer. And instead of 40% of them going to slaughter, we're seeing 75% go to slaughter. And it's not just here, it's every sale across Texas. The drought actually started.
He says Rothschild greed cough. For real, dude, it's insane. And the thing that's really scary too is I think there's only like maybe 5 or 6 somewhere around there companies that actually handle food production in the United States. Like, obviously, you know, the ranchers and the farmers are the ones who make the food, but in terms of production, there's only like 5 or 6 major companies, and all the other companies are like subsets or part of the bigger companies, man. And I mean, when you centralize something like food production and don't have it where multiple sections of the country are feeding themselves and being self-sufficient, it creates situations like this, you know what I mean, where we're not ready to deal with this crisis because, again, it's about profits and cutting the margins and doing everything they can to cut costs and give you the lowest quality food as possible for as cheap as possible, you know?
Going to the West Coast. They have been under, there's not many cattle left out there. We saw it move into, you know, Arizona, and it's just like you can watch it come this direction. So we're in a survival mode right now.
Insane.
David Anderson studies
the whole world's gonna be in survival mode soon, dude. I'm telling you. I don't know if you hear earlier, man, but the shit going on in the UK in regards to energy in Europe is just fucking insane.
Stock economics at Texas A&M University. he knows that it's only a matter of time before the mass cow sell-off begins to affect the rest of the industry, forcing many ranchers out of the business and causing fluctuations in the price of beef.
What sort of downstream effects does that have?
Yeah, that's another thing, man. Food is going to get insanely expensive if this trajectory keeps on going the way that it is, man. We've already seen it the past year, really. I mean, meat specifically is insanely expensive. And all this shit happening, man, people are not going to sit back and take it, man, you know? I'm not one of those people who think that people automatically turn into savages as soon as shit hits the fan, but there's going to be rough times, and there's going to be people who take drastic measures.
When cattle ranchers are selling off their cattle to be slaughtered instead of keeping them, through their lifespan, as they often do.
We have both kind of short-term effects and long-term effects. Oftentimes in the short term, everybody's really forced to sell at the same time. The drought becomes severe enough that you just can't buy hay. You can't afford to buy enough hay to keep all of your animals. So everybody's in the same boat. So
that's exactly what I was talking about, man. It's literally becoming too expensive to produce food. Jesus. He said, I recommend buying a water filter if you haven't done so yet. Oh, dude, I don't trust fucking water. Are you serious, man? Like I said, I do not trust a corporation to not give me fucking lead poisoning, dude. It's either spring water or boil that shit. I'll get a filter eventually, man. I'm not taking any risks.
We start selling off herds, but that doesn't last very long because sooner or later we've culled all the animals we're going to cull from the herd. So we start getting big declines in beef production longer term. And really the pressure then is on higher prices for consumers.
Does that worry you?
Well, I think in terms of cattle numbers, beef production, prices to consumers, it does.
What's the drought monitor telling you right now?
The drought monitor looks worse and worse for Texas, the Southwest.
And the thing that's shitty about it is that we're already at the point where this is irreversible. You know what I mean? We can mitigate it as much, or we can't right now because the government's fucking fucked up, but hypothetically we can mitigate it as much as possible, but there's no stopping what's already been set in motion. Now, I don't think that's doom and gloom. I don't think we're fucked and the world is going to end, but like I said, there's going to be a need for serious restructuring, and there's going to be a lot of climate refugees in the coming future, in the near future. I'd say 15, 20 years, if not sooner, man.
West. So those longer term forecasts would suggest we're going to be that this drought is going to continue.
For an industry that is so dependent on climate, the cattle ranching industry seems not that willing to talk about the potential that some of these changes, the extreme heat, the potential for extreme drought, might be permanent or might last a long time.
That whole subject is, certainly for a lot of people, is pretty controversial.
Right.
But, we might...
The only reason it's controversial is because of propaganda, man. It's insane. Oil conglomerates have the most power in the entire world. They are the most profitable industries because most other industries rely on coal or gas to produce what they're producing, man. So they have a lot of sway. They have a lot of resources to influence people's opinions through propaganda. And they even, sometimes they'll pay scientists to make or to write reports that are favorable towards them. All kinds of crazy fucked up shit, man.
Have maybe more common droughts, more severe droughts. And so if they happen more often and they're more severe, we may not have as many cows in some places as we do in other places, just simply because the ability of the land to carry those cows is not as great or is more variable.
Raising fewer animals is a tough compromise for ranchers, especially in Texas, where the average cattle ranch is home to only about 30 cows. It's part of why Rachel Cottrell is hopeful her family's long-held practice of raising Brahmins, a type of cow native to India which is better suited for hot and dry climates.
Damn, that is a crazy fucking looking cow, dude. But that's also a good solution, man. You know what I mean? Changing the types of animals that we consume to that are more suitable towards the environment to combat the shortages, man. There's going to be a lot of things like that we're going to have to do in the future to prevent starvation, you know, or at least more starvation.
Climates will catch on.
We're here at BRC Ranch. We are a Brahman cattle operation in Bowling, Texas, and where we're actually at now is our show barn, which is
These are the best of the best.
the best of the best for
Those are
Brahman
cool looking
cattle.
cows.
So what's special about these particular cattle?
So if you look at their skin, you can see they have a really short hair coat, almost no hair coat. So it keeps them very cool in the summer.
But what animals though? I'm honestly not too sure, man. You know, I mean, I'd have to look into it. I mean, now I know these cows, but I think we're probably going to see just a reduction of animal processing in general. You know what I mean? I think in the future, people are gonna just more rely on fake meat, you know what I mean? Like, you know, veggie burgers or, you know, whatever, shit like that. And just plants and food that are non-animal in general. Because animal production for food consumption, excuse me, is also a huge contributor to global warming. You know what I mean? So it's a complex problem.
You notice
Oh, never mind. Yeah, no, you're good, bro.
they have a lot of extra skin under their necks compared to a lot of other breeds. So Brahmins have four times the sweat glands of a normal,
Oof,
like
he's a
say,
big
Angus
boy.
or Hereford type cow.
You got a
So
fucking
the
gnarly
more
nose
skin they
ring
have, the more
too.
sweat they
Hell
can
yeah.
produce. And that helps them keep cool in the summer too.
Have you seen an uptick in interest because of the weather lately, because of the drought here in Texas? and
Yeah, she's about to be fucking rich, man. Make some money off of those fucking desert cows. Hell yeah. Get the bag.
in the Western United States?
I have definitely seen an interest in Brahman cattle in the last 2 years, really, 2 to 3 years, because people realize that they need cattle that can survive this hot weather.
Cottrell and her husband Brandon make most of their money.
That's smart, man. That's smart.
Purebred show cows, which are coveted around the world. A single.
And that's another thing too. Like Southerners, and you know, there's like the stereotype of like Southerners and like Midwesterners kind of being like stupid rednecks and shit, but they're some of the most resourceful, hardworking people you'll meet in your life, man. Like no cap. Like it's just unfortunate because they used to be the vanguard of socialism in the United States, but after World War II, the government started equating capitalism with the American way. So that really militaristic labor that came from these places dissipated, and it's unfortunate, you know?
Highly sought after sample can go for as much as $100,000. But you don't have to be a millionaire to buy some of their Brahman cow semen.
Ugh.
Most samples cost less than $100.
Hopefully I'll never be in a job where I have to fucking buy semen.
Why aren't more ranchers doing this? Why aren't more ranchers buying Brahmins or Brahmin crossed breeds?
I think people like tradition, and like I think a lot of ranchers maybe feel like a certain affinity to a certain breed,
right?
And that's why they aren't implementing crossbreeding. But it's easy to implement crossbreeding and keep your herd.
Is it fair to say that maybe we're approaching an inflection point where you kind of don't have a choice? Either you start to...
The inflection point came and passed, man. We're dealing with the consequences of not doing anything after the inflection point, you know? I don't know how able these farmers are to adapt quick enough to prevent these major supply chains from collapsing, but we'll have to see.
Adapt, or you're out of the business?
Well, you can see in a lot of examples through the history of the beef cattle business, the people that adopt the technologies early are the ones that can excel in the long run because you just have an advantage over others. And I mean, here at our ranch, we're sold out of Brahman bulls. As soon as we get bulls ready to start breeding, we have buyers wanting them because people want to use the crossbreeding, and they want to stay in business ultimately, and they know that they may have to.
That's what it's going to come down to. Like, I definitely understand, like, them having like certain affinities towards certain breeds, you know, because certain breeds have certain personalities, and like part of, I think, being a rancher and a farmer is just kind of having a connection with your animals. But when push comes to shove, when you're not making a profit and people are starving, they're gonna have to adapt or die, you know.
change a little bit to adapt to the changing climate and the changing drought conditions.
And again, I don't like to be doom and gloom. I do think progress and a better world is on the horizon. Like, it's just that famous quote, man. The old world is dying and the new world is struggling to be born. That's exactly what it is, man.
When a potential buyer comes to visit, we'll ride through and look at those cattle over there under the trees. Those are actually half Brahman, half Angus cows. And then there'll be some black, white-faced ones that are...
Oh, careful there, buddy. Careful with that fucking terminology.
Whose mothers were half Brahman and half Hereford. And so by doing that, we can get the good traits of all of those breeds.
This is seriously interesting, though. I really like learning about the nitty-gritty of all these processes that keep our society going, you know? Yeah, people... Yeah, exactly, man. People don't have a choice. It's do or die time, or... If it's not do or die time now, people are going to see, man. They're going to see, I'm telling you.
And make an exceptional animal that's environmentally adapted.
In all our time here, we haven't heard, not once, uttered the words climate change. Is that just like totally taboo in the industry or in the area?
Yeah, I mean, it's a controversial issue, but something is definitely going on.
One thing you can say about nearly every...
That's unfortunate too. You know, a lot of these farmers and ranchers are that like salt of the earth kind of right-leaning people, you know? So I think they're a little less quick to react to, you know, all these crazy things going on with the climate. But like I said, I think people are really going to get a reality check soon. And I do think it's going to be, unfortunately, even though there is going to be some pain, some people just need that reality check and that wake-up call so we can just do what we need to do to get this world right, man.
Rancher is they love their land, and their land is a part of who they are. And if you don't take care of the land, your land can't take care of your cattle, and your cattle can't take care of you as a family. And so
the circle of life, buddy.
I mean, our priority is taking care of the land.
I mean, there's no arguing things are changing. To what degree, I don't know. But what I want to do for the welfare of my family's future is just to be ahead of it as much as we possibly can.
Right. And that's all you can do, man. Well, shit, that was a great little video, man. I'm glad that we went through that. Great choice, Yesniak. You're already my favorite freaking follower. Hell yeah, bro. But all right, man. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut the stream now. I've been doing this for about 3 hours. I'm going to try to be streaming every day between 7:30 and 10:30. There may be some days that I don't do it, but I will at least be doing it.
Communism is based.
Oh, there we go. We got another follower. Hell yeah. I heard people, thanks for the follow, by the way. I heard people or a conspiracy floating around that the government wants to kill a huge percent of the population of the males. Dude, there's some people who want it. There definitely is. I mean, especially freaking brown people, you know, brown people. I tend to stray away towards conspiracy, but I mean, there is. The fascists, that's what they want. They want nothing but white Christians in America, you know? And there's stuff like that all around the world, but in different flavors. But all right, man, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a day. If you want to see clips of the stuff that I do on here, just search Prolcast on YouTube. Subscribe over there. I'm going to be chopping all this shit up, editing it. There's a little bit of videos and some old, really bad shit, really bad videos that I made like a year ago before I gave up. But I'm on Reddit. I'm on Twitter, Cast Prol, all that shit, man. I really appreciate you sticking through, giving me a follow. All the people who follow me, man, hell yeah, man. And I'm going to be doing this all the time, man, so I'll definitely see you soon again. Hope you have a good night, bro.